We had a very interesting report that came out over this past weekend in which Tom Pelissero and Ian Rapoport, two guys that I think most of us would agree are legit insiders, basically put it out there where they said that they don't 100% know if Micah Parsons and Maxx Crosby will actually be with their respective teams. They put it out there that Myles Garrett might not be the only guy that's actually on the move. There's a real chance that Maxx Crosby may actually be on the move. And initially I kind of wrote this off and said this just doesn't make a lot of sense. But the more I think about it, the more I've, really honed in on some of what Max has been telling us over the past month or two. Could Maxx Crosby be actually on the move? Like, could it actually happen at this point? Right? And it's an interesting report, right? So these two guys are going to basically put it out there where they're talking a little bit about Myles Garrett. And they kind of threw it in there that the sources that they essentially know say the long-term futures of Micah Parsons and Maxx Crosby with their current teams are essentially up in the air as massive contract extensions loom and new coaching staffs take over with the Cowboys and the Raiders respectively. Now, if you think about what is basically being stated in this article, they're basically saying that the Dallas Cowboys have a whole new coaching staff, the Raiders have a whole new coaching staff, and more than that, so it's a new regime for the Raiders specifically, and they could look to move off of Maxx Crosby. Crosby is worth a ton, right? He's not one of those guys where you trade him for a 4th-round pick. That is not Maxx Crosby. He goes for multiple 1st-round picks. If the Raiders do decide to ultimately move him, he's a huge asset to have for the Raiders. Now, I'll be the first to tell you guys, it doesn't make sense to move Maxx Crosby. He is one of the best players at that position. It's a premium position as well. It's not that easy to find these type of players. Maxx Crosby is a top 3 or 4 guy, right? He's a really, 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 really good pass rusher. And he might be the best run defender from that position in the NFL. But what's interesting about all of this is Maxx Crosby himself has technically mentioned it multiple times that he wants a new contract, right? He's hinted it. He's put it out there on his own podcast. He's went on a couple other podcasts where he stated it as well. Maybe 3 or 4 separate times this guy's put it out there that, there is a contract situation. And the thing is not public yet, right? It hasn't become a thing where Max is saying, I'm going to hold out. It hasn't become a thing where Maxx Crosby is saying, trade me the way Myles Garrett has. But it's not guaranteed that it won't get to that point at some point. Not saying that Max is going to request a trade, but I wouldn't be surprised if Maxx Crosby at some point says, I'm not playing this season without a brand new contract. And Maxx Crosby has every right to want a brand new contract. In fact, if you guys look at Maxx Crosby's current contract, there's a lot of flexibility for both sides, right? Like, the Raiders could technically get out of Maxx Crosby's contract right now if they wanted to. And they'd incur nothing but a $10.2 million dead cap hit. Think about that. The Raiders wanted to move off of Max today. They can release him. It's a $10 million cap hit. Keeping in mind, this guy's like $28 million on an average value, right? Like, he's getting a ton of money. But the fact that if the Raiders wanted to move off of Max, they technically can, also means that his contract's in a kind of a bad spot for Maxx Crosby himself. Right? Max does not have any guaranteed money at this point going forward. The dead cap that we would incur if we were to release Max would essentially be from past years. Right? It's just void years and void money essentially that would get carried into future years. But the Raiders are at this point where Max isn't getting any guaranteed money from this team, and he wants guaranteed money. And it's not just guaranteed, right? I may have just said that Max is getting like $28 million a year. That's not true. His actual average per year is $23.5 million, as you guys can see here, which is a lot lower than what some of these other guys are getting, right? Nick Bosa, I think, is getting like $34 million. Once Myles Garrett ends up getting traded, that new team will give him $37 million as well, right? So Myles Garrett will become the highest paid guy once again. And then, of course, Micah Parsons will sign his contract at some point, and Maxx Crosby will also at some point get another contract. And if I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, man, if you can bring Maxx Crosby in today, sign him today, man. It's going to be the cheapest it'll ever be at this point right now. Right? It'll probably cost you 31 to 35, somewhere in between there. But if you make that happen today, it's going to be cheaper than once Myles Garrett as well as Micah Parsons end up signing. To me, it's an interesting report nonetheless, right? Because I never thought that Maxx Crosby wouldn't be here with the Raiders. But there are a lot of things that he's kind of put out there as well. He's made it known that he wants a new contract. And I think there's a real chance that if the Raiders, right, specifically guys like John Spytek and Pete Carroll, if these guys feel that, hey, Maxx Crosby's a very, very good football player, but maybe he's worth more in trade assets as opposed to, keeping him on the roster. Although he's a great football player, maybe we can replace him. Maybe Tyree Wilson, we put him in a new schemer system and he turns it around and maybe it's Clavon Chasen or Malcolm Koonce that we have the faith in. Maybe the Raiders, guys at the top, do decide to move off of Maxx. I think it would be a huge mistake if they actually did that. I think it'd be kind of stupid, truth be told. But I do understand why Maxx wants a new contract. And I also understand why Ian Rapoport as well as Tom Pelissero would actually think that there's a chance Maxx could not be here as we kind of go forward. Micah Parsons, I think, makes a little bit more sense not to be with the Cowboys because of the fact that the Cowboys have paid, they paid CeeDee Lamb, they're paying Dak Prescott, they have their cornerback that they're paying as well in Trayvon Diggs. And that doesn't include some of the other guys that have gotten contracts, maybe not the highest paid at the positions, but Zach Martin's getting like $18 million a year. You got guys there, their second string wide receiver. Brandon Cooks is getting a pretty nice amount of money. They have some safeties and linebackers are generating some good cap space, right? Micah Parsons could definitely be moved. I'd be surprised with Maxx Crosby. Now, of course, trading Maxx Crosby really became a thing, I would say more so within the Raider Nation fan base, specifically because we got a different report that came out there. Apparently, the Tennessee Titans are open to potentially trading the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Both Adam Schefter and Ian Rapoport have basically both put this out there. They both have basically been on record saying that although it's early on in the process, there's a real chance that the Titans could actually move that pick. So when you start thinking about potentially moving a pick, well, for the Raiders, you think about potentially jumping up to get the best quarterback out of this class, right? If you're thinking Raiders and the need at the quarterback position, maybe you can actually trade up and get Cam Ward in this class, right? Maybe the Tennessee Titans don't want to take a quarterback. I don't think it actually makes sense, truth be told. I do understand that there's a chance teams might not value the quarterbacks in this class, and with that, there's a chance a team, it only takes one team, might actually want a quarterback and they might be willing to trade up, while a team like the Titans might say, we don't want to take a quarterback with this pick, so let's trade out of this. And the Titans general manager even went on record saying that, we're not guaranteed to take a quarterback. Like, we're going to basically take the best player available in this class, right? He said that specifically, that we'll take the best player in this class. And when he's putting that out there, that's who we're essentially going to target, people are saying, Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the class, but he's not better than guys like Travis Hunter. He's not better than Abdul Carter, right? Yeah, he's a quarterback, so he might be more important, but those other guys are better overall players. And I 100% agree with that, right? So if you're the Tennessee Titans and you're going to take the best player available, but a team might be willing to give you all these first-round picks for that pick, it only makes sense to trade back with that team. But I do find it interesting. The Titans are at least looking to explore and potentially trade that first-round pick. If I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, it doesn't make sense to me to trade that pick. I've seen a lot of Raiders fans posting on Twitter that maybe the Raiders should pair up Maxx Crosby with the 6th overall pick and jump up to the 1st overall pick. The thing with trading Maxx Crosby at this point if you're the Raiders is, trading up to get a quarterback means you're going all in because, you're confident that you're going to be able to win the Super Bowl in the next, 4 or 5 years. But trading with Maxx Crosby takes away a huge asset, a guy that's actually productive, right? You're taking away arguably your best player on the team. And you're basically saying that we're going to trade this guy away, and that's going to lessen how good your team actually is. So to me, that doesn't make sense in its own right. I've seen other people say, hey, maybe you trade your first-round pick this year, your first-round pick next year, throw in, 2 second-round picks, your third-round pick. To me, that's, once again, too much. You look at what the Philadelphia Eagles have done on the defensive line, right? You look at guys like Milton Williams, who was a third-round pick. He had 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. Josh Sweat, 4th-round pick. He had 3 sacks in the Super Bowl. Jalex Hunt, right? Another guy, right? And, Hunt came out of nowhere. He had 1.5 sacks in the Super Bowl. He was a rookie this year, and I think he was a 3rd or 4th-round pick as well. The list goes on and on with some of the guys the Eagles have brought in that have actually flashed and have had success. To me, if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, the best thing you can do is just draft linemen. Draft linemen, get better in the trenches. O-line, D-line, get younger at the position if you can. You don't have to pay guys like Adam Butler $15 million to bring them back, or Koonce, or whoever else it is. Continuously replace these guys via the draft. I will always say this. If you draft a tight end in the 2nd round, if you draft a wide receiver in the 2nd round, if you draft a cornerback in the 3rd round or a safety in the 3rd round, there's a high likelihood these guys are going to bust out. Some of these positions, If you don't get the very, very top 2 or 3 guys at that position, and then, sometimes it's also like a scheme thing. Like, one guy will be really, really good with Bill Belichick, and then he'll go to a different scheme and system, and he won't be as good. I will say this. Draft O lineman, draft D lineman. Because scheme does not matter for those positions. And if I'm the Raiders, first round, second round, third round, you should be drafting linemen, right? Because it's generally, top 2 or 3 rounds, you're going to get the best guy at that position. And usually, if you're drafting those guys, it's going to translate. And if you have the best trenches, as the Eagles have shown us, there's a way to win a Super Bowl that way. In fact, the Eagles have won, they've been to 3 Super Bowls, and they've won 2 over the past, 7-8 years, essentially. So if I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, I am not only keeping those picks, I'm not only keeping Maxx Crosby, I will take whoever is the best player available at pick 6. Of course, we got to understand we need a quarterback. So maybe it's Cam Moore, maybe it's Shedeur Sanders. If you could win with them and one of those guys is available at 6, you pull that trigger. If not, you take that best player available. You take that wide receiver, you take that defensive end, you take that corner, right? Just take the best player available and get better, right? And continue to stack the trenches and just continue to build, man. At some point, the Raiders will be good enough and they'll be in position to be able to draft that quarterback. They got to pull the trigger when that happens. We've seen our team skip out on a quarterback over the past couple of years. So we'll see what ends up happening. Now, I did do a poll on Twitter where I asked you guys, if the Raiders cannot get a rookie quarterback in this class, which option would you go with at the quarterback position in 2025? Essentially, I said, you can get Sam Darnold at about $35 million a year for 3 years. You can do a 1-year Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, or you can do a bridge situation. We take Jacoby Brissett or Justin Fields, and of course, with that situation, you're going to be drafting a rookie quarterback. Probably wouldn't be with the 6th overall pick, but you would be drafting some sort of rookie quarterback that you can develop. And then finally, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew as your full-time starter. You're not taking a rookie quarterback. And there's the results, man. Most of you guys want some combination of Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. And I agree with it. I think it's just the smartest decision if you're the Las Vegas Raiders to go down the path of Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson for 1 year, right? 1 year. You can even draft a quarterback at that point if you really wanted to. But, truth be told, the Raiders roster is pretty solid, right? I know some people will disagree with that, but, if the Raiders with the 6th overall pick get Travis Hunter, for example, and he's a full-time wide receiver, and you add in Aaron Rodgers to the Raiders offense, and then in the 2nd round, you take the best guard available, that's a pretty solid offense, right? Aaron Rodgers, Travis Hunter, you add another guard, DJ Glaze, hopefully develops at right tackle. You will have to add a running back, which you can either get one via free agency, or you can just draft one in like the 3rd round or 4th round. We saw the Buccaneers do this with Irving. 4th round, guy's a really, really good running back. You go down that path right there, you're looking at a team that might be able to actually make the playoffs, especially if the defense is fully healthy. You bring back Koonce, you bring back Merrick, you bring back, make sure Butler's back, and then, of course, Crosby's taken care of. That defense with that offense, you bring in Aaron Rodgers and then are able to land a guy like Travis Hunter. That's a solid football team. You can actually win games with that team. And I would make this argument the same way I did in yesterday's video. The Raiders' defensive line is not that much different than the Eagles' defensive line. Like, if you guys remember, our defensive line had games early on. We were dominating with Maxx and Christian. And we didn't have Koonce at the time, but we were dominating. We were getting after it so quickly. The D-line was very, very, very hard to block by the opposing offensive lines. If the Raiders get healthy and they're able to kind of get into this year with the group that we expected last year, watch out for the Raiders, man. Another option some of you guys picked was the Sam Darnold at $35 million. I'm going to back off of Sam Darnold a little bit. I probably wouldn't roll forward with Sam Darnold, truth be told. Although Sam Darnold did, take a step up and he did look good for the Minnesota Vikings, I think spending $35 million a year on a quarterback where you don't really know, is he going to translate? Is he going to continue to have success? And can he actually win you a Super Bowl? Right? To me, I'm not 100% sure if I agree with that. Now, I will say this, right? Sam Darnold did look a lot better last year with the Vikings. So maybe he comes to the Raiders and then, the mixture of Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll, and these guys mold him into kind of what they want. That could make sense as well, right? It's kind of what they did with Geno Smith. And truth be told, Sam Darnold might be more talented than Geno Smith, right? there's a chance the Raiders can win down this path as well. But I do hesitate giving a quarterback $35 million, because giving Sam Darnold $35 million means Koonce is gone. It means Merrick's gone. You're going to probably miss out on a couple other guys as well. And, you know, I do hesitate going down that path as well. But if you do get Sam Darnold, you still have the 6th overall pick to make up, right? You can get James Pierce Jr., you can get Abdul Carter, you can get a defensive end to go opposite of Maxx. You already have Christian under contract as well. Maybe you can go down that path, right? That one's kind of interesting as well. I don't hate the Jacoby Brissett, Justin Fields with the bridge rookie quarterback either. You could take a quarterback with the 6th overall pick if you wanted to. I would probably go down this path. Probably as a third option, truth be told. I think I like the Sam Darnold option a little bit more now. I would still take Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson first. Probably Aaron Rodgers more than Russell Wilson. But I wouldn't be opposed to bringing in like Jacoby Brissett, Justin Fields, or even Joshua Dobbs. And I know a lot of people, you know, don't like and don't appreciate that I mentioned Josh Dobbs, but Dobbs is a good quarterback. He's only like 27 years old as well. Remember, there was a time when people are like, Geno Smith's garbage. He's the worst quarterback in the NFL. And he turned it around. And the same thing with Sam Darnold. It was the same thing with Baker Mayfield. And those guys have had a real option to actually start. Josh Dobbs has never had a real option to start. So we don't even know what this quarterback actually is. But I've spoken to people that actually think he could start as a quarterback this year. And if he gets into the right scheme and system, he could actually be legit, right? So, you know, don't be surprised if sometime down the line Josh Dobbs ends up starting for a team at some point. And then, of course, the lowest, not surprised, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew as your full-time quarterback, got a whopping 7.9%. We had 3,000 people that voted on this. 7.9%. It's less than 300 people, which is kind of crazy, like 265 people. That's, you know, I understand why you probably wouldn't want to go down that route. Now, if I took out Minshew, I wonder if the 7.9 would get bumped up a little bit. But I do understand why you don't want to roll with those two guys, right? To me, Aiden O'Connell's not a starting caliber quarterback, right? The guy just doesn't have that ability to create. And we saw Patrick Mahomes struggling against the Eagles. You know, imagine a guy, and Mahomes can run around still. Imagine a guy that can't run around, right? Like, you have no shot to win a Super Bowl if you get matched up with one of those type of defensive lines, right? And I know not every team has that type of defensive line, but regardless, I think for the Raiders, you got to be able to bring in a different quarterback. Some people have mentioned Derek Carr as well. You know, I'm not 100% out on Derek Carr, but I'm also not a huge fan of Derek Carr as we kind of go forward. You know, I think it's very important that in your quarterback, you either get, you know, if you're going to go the older quarterback route, right, that's going to be like the Aaron Rodgers route, you got to get a guy that's won at the highest level, a guy that's won playoff games, a guy that's won a Super Bowl, and you're going all in for 1 year. Or you can go down the route of like, hey, let's bring in a guy that's, you know, maybe he's 26, 27 years old, and he's a guy that could long-term have success, right? Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold kind of fit that same mold. Justin Fields fits that same mold. I think the worst thing the Raiders can do right now is bring in quarterbacks that are kind of past their prime. You know, Dak Prescott wouldn't make sense. Derek Carr doesn't make sense. Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, these guys don't make sense. All of them are past their prime. None of them have really shown that they can win that big game. And, you know, you always want to take either the guy that's won the big game or the guy that has a ton of upside. You don't want to kind of get stuck in between, especially guys that are kind of aging. So we'll see what ends up happening, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.